Good evening, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another edition of Serving the People with me, your host, Anesia Baptiste, NDP Senator in the House of Parliament. Please bow with me for a word of prayer. Father in heaven, please help me to speak the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. In Jesus' name, amen. And now let me remind you of how you may contact me at Serving the People. You may write to me at servingthepeople@.ab, that's servingthepeople.ab@gmail.com, or you may call me at 528-1015, 528-1015. The information is at the bottom of your screen for your attention. Remember that this program is brought to you with the assistance of concerned citizens within St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now let me just make a quick announcement about the Young Democrats, that is National Debate Competition. The Young Democrats, the youth arm of the New Democratic Party, will be having a public speaking competition. And all you young Democrats out there in the various constituencies around the country, you're asked to contact your various presidents to know how you can participate if you wish to. And you may also call the National President of the Young Democrats, Mr. Nick Francis. You may contact him at telephone number 526-8567. That's 526-8567. And now, in this evening's program, I wish to do a review of some issues in the budget debate 2011, issues arising out of that debate. Two main issues I want to look at very briefly. One had to do with my own experience of where I tried to use a flip chart easel presentation, but I was stopped by the Honorable Speaker of the House, Hendrik Alexander, and another has to do with my explanation of a budget cut issue within the tourism department. Let me just briefly remind you of what happened. Take a look at this clip.
Budget debate 2011. I wish to firmly support the conclusion made by the Honorable Opposition Leader early in this debate that this budget 2011 is one that is unsustainable. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Members, we cannot realistically make the amount of money in revenue that is needed to run the country's affairs. We don't have enough money to spend on what we say we are going to spend it on. That is the plain and simple matter. For yet another year, this is the case. But Mr. Speaker, as a part of my presentation, I want to go down memory lane. I want to show what history reminds us of with respect to the performance of the New Democratic Party administration and the Unity Labour Party administration in terms of the kind of budgets that have been presented. You know, Mr. Speaker, it was the third President of the United States of America, one Thomas Jefferson, who once said in 1787, and I quote, "History, by apprising them of the past, will enable them to judge of the future." End of quote. And so this is what I want to show us today in this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have paper which I wish to lay before the Honorable House. Just paper with some figures. I want to go back to the NDP administration first, and I want to say that when we look at the year 1995, the NDP presented a budget with a surplus of $239,449. 1996, we had a surplus of $569,368. It rose. 1997, a budget surplus reaching $1,081,861. 1998, Mr. Speaker, $1,080,000 in surplus. 1999, the New Democratic Party administration presented a budget with $4,485,000 in surplus. 3,270,000. Mr. Speaker, we presented a budget where not only did we have the revenue we needed for our expenditure, but we had more on top of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Mr. Speaker, during that time, because you see, a response particularly to something the Honourable Member from South Central Windward did when he quoted Matthew 25 and misrepresented it. Because those stewards, Mr. Speaker, who were considered faithful by the master, they brought surplus, they brought on top of the talents that they had been given. Not deficits, Mr. Speaker, not deficits. The unfaithful servants did not bring a surplus. But let me continue, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, to accomplish this exercise, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To accomplish this exercise, Mr. Speaker, I went into the estimates from 1995 come up, and I worked it out. And I remember consulting even with some business people who paid careful attention over the years, and our figures were correct. Mr. Speaker, those estimates would have been official documents of this House, and I will lay these papers to you afterwards, and they can always be verified accordingly. But I have been hearing as a new member that over the time in the NDP administration, we always had a surplus, I went and I saw it for myself, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, I rise on a point of order, but I will admit before under 35A. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I am, as an honourable member of this House, I do not know whether the rules allow for props. But in any case, I would expect to be able to see the props. And from this side, I'm unable to see the props that are brought. I really do not know what is the ruling on presentation of props.
I'm very glad you raised it. Because the matter was brought before. And I really allowed just to see what. Because I did tell the honourable member that the logistics, I am confident, may not necessarily work. And I think yesterday I called into my office and I think I dealt with that also. And I thought that really should abandon the idea. But the last conversation we had, I said, it's virtually null. But I just wanted to see what it was. And I think it's a little bit cumbersome at this particular point in time. And, you know, it's really is. And I don't think it is meeting the objective that she intended, that is intended. So, because that same information you have there could be presented otherwise. I've seen nothing there. I just want to be convincing myself. I've seen nothing there that you can present in another form. A form that is more in keeping with the debate in the House. So I will ask that you discontinue that, and I'm sure you would have had those same information written on in some other way we can meet. And that's why I raised the question about who watching us and who listening to us, and the relevance of that. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, before I continue, I wish to say that I think there would have been some misunderstanding, because when I discussed with you yesterday, I thought your objection was to the whole apparatus, because I spoke about bringing an actual tabletop easel, and you expressed your concerns about logistics, which I appreciated. But I figured that since it was just paper holding up, just like anybody else would present. Mr. Speaker, just like any other person would present a document to the House and say, well, this is the manifesto or whatever the case is, and I don't expect them to try to get us to read it, I thought by writing it out in a larger form, it would have been more.
That same information could be presented other than in that sort of, I view it as a bit cumbersome way in presenting that information. So I'm saying let us deal with the conventional way that we are accustomed to deal with these things. So these things have a way of creeping in easily, and then something else, a big chalkboard might come. Go ahead, you have not lost any time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I respect your authority in this House, and therefore I will continue without it, but I do not disagree. I do not agree with you that it is cumbersome in any way. I am the one holding it up, and I don't have a problem, and I'm certainly not disrupting the order of the House in any way by holding it. I thank you, and I will continue.
Just a minute, please. You don't have to agree with me. I have ruled. You don't have to agree with me, Honorable Senator. I have ruled, and my ruling is what stands. So whether you agree with me or not, I have ruled. So you have to be careful with your comments. All right? Thank you very much.
This is why I said also, Mr. Speaker, that I respect your authority and will not continue.
Yes, my dear people, you saw what happened in history. Recent history. Now let me show you briefly what exactly I was trying to do, because it was really simple. On my right here is the chart that I was using, and as you saw in the presentation, I went through the period 95 to 2000 where the NDP brought budget with surplus. That is, we not only had enough in revenue to cover our expenditure, but we had more than what we needed. And the biggest surplus was seen in 1999, where we had over $4 million in surplus. Then, had I been given an opportunity, I would have gone on to show on the chart the actual opposite. Well, actually, in the first 3 years, 2000 to 2004, the ULP administration brought smaller surpluses than what the NDP had, the smallest being 120,000, and it was in the year 2004. Their surpluses decreased, as you can see from these figures. But by 2005, right down to 2011, you would observe that there were deficits from 37.3 million in deficit to what is on the other page, which is a deficit of 108 million in 2010. And when I say deficit, all it simply means is that in these years under the ULP, from about 2005 right down to 2011, we didn't have what we needed in revenue to pay for what we wanted to spend. So we had less, and that was not a good situation to be in. But I simply showed it, and I also wanted to show how that under the ULP, every time our deficit increased, so did the total debt of the public, the total public debt. From 37.3 million in deficit and a debt of 765 million, we went to a deficit of 108 million in 2010 and 105 million this year, 2011, and our debt rose to the point of 1 billion to 230,834,000. So, and I was making the point that the debt of the country rises every time the deficit rises, and it shows that we are constantly being put in more and more debt because we always have less and less of what we need to run the country. And this is an unfortunate situation to be in, and that's the point I was making, and I was going on to show how it affects the opportunity or the ability to run the programs properly in the various ministries that we say we want to run, to spend on the things that we say we want to spend on. That's what I was saying to the people. I wasn't allowed to use the apparatus, but this was the simple matter of fact. And I mean, it's really unfortunate when you consider, as I've been informed, that a few years ago, the ULP administration had the Honorable Prime Minister making PowerPoint presentation in the House of Parliament. That was allowed, but my little apparatus of a chart on a flip chart easel was not permitted. That's something for you to think about, my dear people. The next issue I want to